And here we are. What's going on, everybody? What's going on, everybody out there? Hope everyone is doing well as usual. As usual, but let's get right into it. There's so many things going on. Where do we start? Well, where do I start? First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who's taken the time out to check out this video and lend me your ears. I appreciate it. I hope I don't disappoint with the material that I deliver and the content and messages or messages in my content that I convey. Now, we're going to take a moment. We're going to take a moment to really reflect on, I think, the main key point that I want to highlight tonight. The main key point. And the key point is about being kind. The act of kindness, right? What does that mean to you? Well, to me, when I think of being kind, I think of exercising a certain level of behavior where I exude compassion. I'm even to some point empathetic, understanding. I may even want to say that you're caring, selfless, you're supportive, you do nice things. A person of cool character, gentle character, right? I think that in my scope and limited range can define what being kind is. Now, but let's take a moment right now and think about the flip side, or what could lead to the flip side of being kind. If you are living life in a kind way, sure. And then you meet an adversary or a person who wants to be adversarial towards you, and they push you. And you say, okay, you let it go. And then they push you again. You let it go. They push you another time. You let it go. Now, throughout all of this, you're still exuding kindness, but you're getting pushed. So after numerous attempts of getting pushed, it gets to a point where perhaps the adversary is seeing your kindness as a weakness. Excuse the noise overhead. There's air traffic right now. Interesting. But besides the adversary possibly taking or interpreting your kindness to be a weakness, you as a person who's being kind and being pushed over and over and over and over again, at some point, when you say enough is enough, and then your actions are supported by those words, your adversary needs to immediately become fearful. Because perhaps they took your kindness for a weakness. And you've had enough. And your position now is no more. That's it. Enough Enough of the abuse. Enough of the mistreatment. Enough of the disrespect. Enough. Here we are in a situation in the world right now where we have another. How many stories have we heard? How many stories have we heard from different spectrums? But let's bring it back home to this incident that took place in Minneapolis 2 days ago. How many stories have we heard similar to that so far? Within the last 10, 15 years. We've heard it longer than that, but let's, keep it at like 10, 15 years. How many of these occurrences and these stories have we heard? Make no mistake about it, people. Unfortunately, certain things are done by design. And the reason why I say this is because when incidents like what took place happen, it invokes rage and anger at the highest form, at the highest core. But eventually that dies out until the next incident happens. So you have another resurgence, and then that dies out until the next, and then that dies out until the next, and then that dies out until the next. See, it's getting to a point where enough will be enough. Enough is going to be enough. It's more than just about criticizing, pointing fingers, blaming, talking. It's purely now time to act. And this is where it gets tricky, because many people can't deal with stressors the same. Everyone has their own levels of coping mechanisms and their own thresholds, meaning if they go past a certain point, they react differently to life issues. But it's getting to a point where enough will be enough. And that's with everything, whether it's about waking up, whether it's about just simply saying, no, this isn't right, whether it's about just simply saying, I've had enough. Had enough. It's reaching a boiling point. It is. It's reaching a boiling point. We've seen incidents occur where there have been civil unrest and riots and looting. But what has that solved? What has that solved? What people do understand, what the universal element that everyone understands is money. Violence is understood too, clearly. But so is money. So is money. If you hit and strike the money, you can inflict immediate change. There'll be instant results. The same token with if you resort to violence, there's instant consequences as well. Which has the better outcome though? Which has a better outcome? Using violence or being smart, calculated, strategic, and striking finance, money, economics. A hothead can't go far. With a cool, level, balanced, intelligent mind that's incredibly, I'm talking about detailed, meticulous in their strategy and application of the strategy, the results can last much longer, especially if the results have a beneficial component to it, if it benefits the whole, rather than resorting to pillage, destruction, and just frankly just bloodshed, which can bring its own changes too, rightfully so. But come on now. Because throughout all the incidents that took place, throughout all the incidents that have taken place, all the occurrences and the incidents that will take place, all of that stuff will die down. And people aren't going to really talk about it anymore. Like this situation right here. And then what happens? Something else comes up, and then it's going to create more flares, more talk, more whatever, protest, demonstrations, possibly rioting, some arrests, yada, yada, yada. It's a media, it's a thing to talk about. A month or two later, quiet. But the problems still fester. The problems are still there. The seed is still there. It's not eradicated. Get to the source. Address it head on in a smart, calculated way. Now, I'm not saying, just stand for anything and just take the abuse. That's not what I'm talking about here. If you really pay attention to what I'm saying, because you can't have peace without war. So there will be casualties. It's just a part of life. There will be an aggressive change. You have to have that. That's part of the cycle. That's part of the continuum. It's part of what we live, what we exist in, as far as duality. You can't have one without the other. But what's important is the balance. It's the balance. In the height of this confusion that we're going through with pandemic and economic crisis, etc., when you see these little incidents happen, it just adds more fear to your human system. It shocks you, it traumatizes you even further, keeps you distracted, keeps your attention separated from what's really with larger issues that are taking place. Not to dismiss what's going on because it's foul, but it's a small example of a larger illness, a larger set of illnesses that is taking place, literally. Because this is reoccurring. So how does it stop, right? One idea that I heard someone mention was creating something where people can be allowed to defend themselves against police officers that want to act in illegal ways, that want to exude their authority, exert their authority unlawfully against citizens, where citizens have the right to defend themselves. That, I don't think that exists. That could possibly be a game changer. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. To where you're witnessing something happening, you're witnessing a person, you know, who's held under against their will, and you're seeing something going on, and the person's dying, where any citizen or person could just walk up to them and pretty much, or defend themselves. Who knows? Who knows what, because how many accounts? There's so many stories, there's so many documented events that took place from actual incidents of where people were killed by the police on camera. And folks, sometimes I mean, history also has a way of rhyming, where other countries are looking at the United States and they're watching what's going on. Some of them are thinking, like, what the hell? Like, why aren't the people moving? Why aren't the people mobilizing? Why aren't the people? And it's more than just rioting. It's more than just a riot. Like, I don't know, man. Like, but you have groups like Black Lives Matter. I just, what? Let me not get into that right now. That whole thing. Let me not. Just, what changes? What changes? Can a peaceful protest prevent future killings? How many peaceful protests have been done already all over the country? How's that fair? How's that turned out? Because people continue to go. Now, don't get me wrong. You have some knuckleheads out here, nefarious individuals who you have a bunch of bad people out here, bad apples. That's just what it is. It's another part of life. In order to recognize the good, you have to have the bad. It's just what it is. Law enforcement, incredible job. I think it's necessary. But there's a certain level of accountability based on a certain measurement that needs to be, I guess, set in place to address certain issues accordingly. Like, it's just, because after a while, it just becomes obvious. In certain cases, it's not about serving and protecting, it's about killing. Pure and simple. Human beings are complicated, man. We're not simple people. Mm-mm. But I really don't see what peaceful protest so far has done. Because I'd like to believe that in peace, having peaceful protests, that there was some type of intelligent message or measures that were in place to address injustices, pure and simple. But again, you keep pushing, you keep getting pushed, you keep getting pushed, you keep getting pushed, you keep getting pushed, and one day you're going to wake up and say, I'm not getting pushed anymore. And that sentiment is going to reverberate along a stream of consciousness. People are going to feel the same thing at the same time and say, enough. Enough. And won't care about the consequences, because at that time, anything rational goes out the window. Now it's about survival. Because you keep getting pushed, you keep getting pushed, you keep getting pushed. You're back against a corner, you're back against a wall, you keep getting pushed. Animal instinct. After a while, you gotta fight. You gotta fight. If you can't even run, some might just continue to take it, and many won't take it anymore. Just what it is. It's just what it is, sadly. It's reality. I get it. I get why we want to, well, those of us, many may want to try to resolve without bloodshed, but it's getting to a point now where the blood is spilling anyway. So people are just going to go for broke. And I understand what that's about. If you understand, if you really understand that you can't have peace without war, you understand why it's going to get to a point where there's no coming back. Because people simply have had enough. People simply have had enough. You know? I don't like to think of things from one perspective in a way. I like to see different points of view. But after a while, it's just like you can't really justify improper, unethical, oppression and oppressive behavior. Like, you just can't. Abusive, like, just abuse of power, and to suggest that or enforce the idea of one person can absolutely and completely override the existence of another. I don't know.